Hi, I'm Justine. I'm going to be talking to you about how to better work with your designers. Maybe you have a designer in shop, or they're remote, or you're looking to hire one. Hopefully I can give you some tips to improve the working relationship. Too often I hear that I can't work with designers, they're the worst, like they hand me off flattened PSDs and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? That shouldn't be happening. A little bit of background on me. I was traditionally a print designer, and I ended up getting a job offer from a Ruby consultancy in Ohio, and I thought, okay, I'll take a job like before I graduate college. Seems like a good idea to line that up. And so I had previously taught myself HTML and CSS when I was younger and just kind of got back into it. I spent 2.5 years working for the consultancy, then I did some freelance, and now I work for Travis CI, which is super fun. Those guys are awesome. So we all know that designers and developers are different. We work on different applications, we do different things day to day, but we're still working on the same projects, and it's really important that you have a good communication flow with them, because if you're not communicating properly, then neither one of you is going to be able to do your job, and that's when projects start getting sloppy. You're not making everything you said you were going to do in an iteration, and the client is unhappy, you're pissed off at your coworker. These things just shouldn't happen, and it's really easy to get along. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm always kind of surprised when people say they can't work with designers, because I'm like, I didn't think I was that bad. But so what you should really do is define your expectations from the start with your designer. If you expect your designer to know JavaScript and Git and Ruby or whatever, you should tell them that from the start. Don't hire someone just saying, oh, you can design, come on in, and expect them to know what you were looking for. That's never going to happen. Designers are cool, but we're not mind readers. So you want to make sure that before you hire, make sure it's a good fit, both in terms of the technologies they know, what is their design flow and process, and even culturally, everybody is different, and it's important to make sure that they know what they're expected to do. You have it all laid out. Say you already have a designer, and maybe they don't know everything you were hoping that they would know. Teach them things. I had to learn Git when I started working for the consultancy. I had no idea that Ruby was even a thing until I got hired. I was like, ooh, pretty, shiny, I didn't know. And so it was nice because people would sit me down, like I went through Git immersion, learned that, and it's not that designers can't learn these things, it's just that maybe nobody sat us down and helped us out. If you don't have time to sit down with them or they're remote, point them in the direction of some tutorials, learn Ruby and stuff like that. Most often than not, designers will want to learn these things because I would like to know the most about your job as I can, so that I can work with you better and expect and understand what you have to do on a day-to-day basis. If your designer doesn't want to learn these things and you really, really kind of wish they would, maybe they're not a good fit, and maybe you should kick them out. If you do have a designer in-house, I always recommend you should sit with them. Sit with us, pair with us. If we have the opportunity to sit side by side and I'm like, oh, this feature would be awesome if we could do this, can we do that? And you're like, yeah, we can do that. And I'm like, awesome. And so if you can sit with them and have that open dialogue face to face, that's awesome. You just can't really replace that. And I think you should always be involved, both of you, from the start. I don't believe in only designers being brought on after all of these planning meetings had gone on, and then you're just like, hey, make it look pretty. I'm like, that's not my job. I think it's really important that you sit down with the client from the start, designers and developers, bounce ideas back and forth, and then that way you both are on the same page from the start. Nobody's been brought on 2 weeks later saying, here's what we were thinking. Make sure this is all happening from the very beginning with the client if possible. You got to keep conversations going. The worst thing that can happen is that you do these planning meetings and you think, okay, rad, this is going to be cool. We're on the same page. And then you both go off into your separate corners and you don't talk to each other until like the final iteration. And you're like, what happened? This doesn't work. I think you should keep communication going, whether you're remote or you're in the same office. Touch base, make use of software like, you know, Basecamp, Campfire. On Travis, we all have our own, you know, Campfire room, different rooms for different projects or different things that we're working on. And constantly I'm able to communicate with people that are like all the way across the ocean in Berlin, and I'm in the United States. And that makes my day-to-day life a lot easier when I can just touch base, check in. And then Basecamp, for me, I really prefer against Pivotal Tracker. Pivotal Tracker just is not a tool for designers to be able to, you know, keep up. The estimations and the cards and the bugs is not really something that I personally find very useful. In fact, like, I just try to stay away from Pivotal Tracker altogether, so I do kind of prefer Basecamp. It allows me to drop in comps. You can make all these notes. I get an email saying you made a comment. I think that's a really great tool for you to try and use with your designers if they also are not really comfortable with Pivotal. GitHub issues, you can do the same thing. File an issue with me, say, best check that typo, that's wrong. And then I can go ahead, close the issue, fix everything. And that works out really well. But let's face reality, not everybody works in the same office. You can't always sit down and pair with people, but I am such a huge advocate of having face-to-face time. If you're not talking to me face-to-face, if we're just kind of chatting on IRC or you know, Campfire or whatever, I'm kind of more likely to check out. And you know, I do work from home. There's 2 giant dogs in the living room probably fighting with each other, and if I have this designated set time to have a face-to-face conversation with you, it's just like we're talking in real life, and I'm more likely to be engaged with the conversation, and we can bounce things back without me waiting for you to get back to your keyboard or whatever. You just set a time, keep checking in, have good face-to-face time, and it really does improve the quality of just your overall flow of communication. So this is like the big thing, right? So I mentioned this before. Always developers come up to me, or like, you know, if I speak at another conference, they raise their hand. They're like, what happens when I get this PSD and I don't know what size the typeface is? This should never be happening. I don't know how this happens all the time. Where are you getting these designers? Like, you know, I think it's really important for me to be able to write the front end as much as I can, you know, get everything done, and then you go ahead and handle the back end. I don't think anybody should ever be receiving just a flattened PSD. Make your designers export these assets for you. And again, if they're not, bye, you know? I just think that's super duper important. I don't think it's my job to know everything about Ruby, but it's certainly my job to make our overall project get out the door faster, cleaner, quicker. And then because I do think that I should be in charge of exporting my own assets and getting all of the front end done, it's also really important for you to let me know what you are expecting. What kind of device is this going to be on? Does this need to be Retina? Does this need to be responsive? And probably, yes, it should be responsive. I think everything should be responsive now. But you know, have these things in the designer's mind, because again, I can't read your mind. If you don't tell me what you need, I can't give it to you. I'm not gonna just say, hey, surprise, I made this Retina ready for you because I felt like exporting 2 different assets. No, nobody would ever do that. And then also, so when we're having these planning meetings or we're talking about features or some of the back end, I try to know as much technical jargon as I can, and I learn more and more the longer that I work in tech. But sometimes it's really hard for me to understand highly technical situations, words, languages, you know, programming terms. It's really helpful. There was someone I used to work with, Leon Gersing. He was so good at explaining things to me in a way that I could understand, and not necessarily treating me like a child, like I don't know what you're talking about, but for example, they were talking about kernels, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Can you explain it to me? And so he, you know, we got on the whiteboard and he just kind of explained it to me in just regular terms that I, you know, could understand. Or if I wasn't sure about something, like a way to do something, he would kind of try and relate it to me in art terms. That's really helpful, and I think the more that you're able to recognize when someone's not understanding you and trying to find a new way to communicate that, again, like, I'll get it, I'll understand it next time, but don't be frustrated with your designers if they don't know everything that you know, because chances are you don't know everything I know either. So it's kind of, let's play fair and kind of teach each other a lot of things together. And again, don't expect designers to do all the work and expect me to know everything you're talking about and you make like jack effort to learn what I know. There's a really great book called Bootstrapping Design that I always recommend to developers. It's kind of how I was saying Leon was really good at explaining things to me in a way I can understand. This book is so good at explaining design in developer terms. It's just like, it's phenomenal. It's a very inexpensive ebook. You can download a preview of it if you want to. It's by Jared Drysdale. It's so good. I can't even stress that everybody in this room should be reading that book. It's a quick read. But try and make an effort to know some of the things that I know when I talk about like hue and chroma glow and value. These are some things that I would really like developers to understand more, since I'm making such an effort to understand some of the more highly technical things you're talking about. And again, like, if you know this much and I know this much and we put those together, you get this Venn diagram where we have this nice overlap and we're more able to communicate clearly. Nobody's kind of like, huh? It's, you know, try and learn as much as you can. I'm trying as best as I can, and if we're both trying, then how could we go wrong? That's it.